Welcome to Talking Story. Today I'm going to lay out my top 10 sci-fi reads. Now, sci-fi has a lot of subgenres of military sci-fi, I know you're going to keep that, you f***er. Sci-fi has a lot of subcategories. Post-apocalyptic, dystopian, military sci-fi, first contact. With this list, I tried to keep as many of those subcategories on the list as possible, while at the same time ranking my top 10 favorite reads. So let's get into it. Number 10 is a first contact story. Number 10 is The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. Now, this is a book that you may not see on your sci-fi rack at whatever bookstore you go to. You might have to go past the shelf Nazis and go to either literature or a different section. Mary Doria Russell was a retired anthropologist, so she understands the clash of cultures that are coming together for the first time and the chaos that can bring about. So, true to historic form, she has a team of scientists and one Jesuit priest going to meet an alien culture for the first time in our species' history. This story is told from the point of view of that Jesuit priest and what has taken place and what has happened during the first contact has caused him to lose some physical capabilities and also have a complete loss of faith by what he found on this other world. This is a first contact story that has a different perspective than any other I've ever read, and it's a great pick for this list because I don't think anywhere near enough people have read it. The Sparrow, coming in at number 10, Mary Doria Russell. She also wrote a follow-up book to this called Children of God. I don't think it quite captures the lightning in the bottle that The Sparrow does as well. Coming in at number 9, this is a bit of a cheat. I have a lot of cheats on this list, quite honestly, and it's my list, so I'm allowed. This cheat is actually a book of short stories, and it is The Complete Robot by Isaac Asimov. Now, this is a series of short stories that sets up his entire robot storyline that eventually goes into the Foundation storyline. These stories have had such an effect on sci-fi literature ever since their construction. Everyone now uses the rules of robotics that are laid down in these stories. They've become such a touchstone that eventually, when we do have robots that are beyond robotic vacuums running around our house, I am positive that these laws of robotics are going to be in use in our actual culture in day-to-day life. This is such an amazing group of short stories. It goes from the very beginnings of robot creation all the way up to Dr. Susan Calvin, who is a robotic psychologist trying to understand the workings of their mind. And in trying to understand the workings of these robots' minds, actually, it does tell us a little bit of something about the workings of our own mind. This is such a prescient work. It's such a work that has its tendrils, like I say, through basically every sci-fi story that includes a robot after, and I think it will impact our actual world beyond literature going into the future. Coming in at number 8 is my post-apocalyptic choice, and that choice is The Stand by Stephen King. I don't think any best of list cannot include Stephen King, at least a list of speculative fiction. He looms so large for several generations back and probably several generations going forward the way he cranks out work. So he's that strange acupuncturist needle that has punctured the body of the American life and settled itself into that energy of our collective subconscious. He understands the American character. He understands it to the point of Norman Rockwell or Frank Capra, but his lens is a truly horrific, twisted one. In this story, it's the last survivors of humanity versus the walking dude. And if you have not read this book, it does tie into all of his other Dark Tower books and everything else, but you don't have to read all that. If you haven't read this book, I'm shocked, but do yourself a favor and pick it up. The Stand by Stephen King. It is the ultimate post-apocalyptic good versus evil tale. Coming in at number 7, I had to go satire here. This is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This book will make you laugh out loud and then make you look at our society in a totally different way. At the opening of this book, Arthur Dent finds out our beautiful planet is in the way of a hyperspace highway and is set up for demolition. And from there, he goes on, travels and travails, and he meets so many extraterrestrial characters. All the while, they are mirroring ourselves, mirroring our bureaucracy, mirroring our politics. Nothing is safe from Douglas Adams' scalpel-like wit. He skewers it all, and it is an amazing, amazing fun read if you have not checked it out. Coming in at number 6, I went with the subcategory of militaristic sci-fi. For me, there is no better example of this than Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. It is the perfect crossroads of childhood lost and conqueror's triumph. Young Ender Wiggins is pulled up into battle school, which is a militaristic satellite school, and he shows himself that he is the best military mind of his time to go after the buggers. This book for military sci-fi, in my book, cannot be beat. If you have not read it, there are some following books, but I don't think they quite capture what war does to our society and have the breadth and fun of this first one that is Ender's Game. Coming in at number 5. Now, I have to go Mad Scientist. This type of story can only be told in science fiction. And I have to go all the way back to the beginning for this type of story for my list. I have to go with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Ever since that weekend on Lake Geneva, she has staked her territory out of this. Now, it's been done over and over again from the Island of Dr. Moreau to Jurassic Park. But what she did, mapping out, and she's the perfect person to map this out. She understood what it means to birth a life into this world. She had 4 children. She was almost killed by a miscarriage. So when she goes to tell a story of a man trying to transcend our own humanity and obtain godhood by breathing life into dead tissue, never been done again to this level. It's absolutely phenomenal. Coming in at number 4, this is a bit of a cheat too, and if you look at it, because I started thinking time travel. And if I think time travel, immediately what comes to me is Billy Pilgrim has become unstuck in time. I cannot get past Slaughterhouse-Five. Now, this is a bit of a cheat because for me, in the hands of this master of Kurt Vonnegut Jr., is this a time travel story? It absolutely could be read as one. Or is it a story of just a very damaged human being from what he's seen, and all this is just a cinemascape in his mind of damage, a warping of his very soul, and this is the best way he can cope with it? It's both those things. Kurt Vonnegut takes his job of giving ultimate respect to the audience, and he lets you identify who you are and what you bring to the art, and what you need out of it is what you take. This is a seminal work. This is a work that should be studied and taught forever and ever and ever. And if you have not read it, throw it on your sci-fi list. It has to go there, Slaughterhouse-Five. Now, these next two are kind of hard to categorize, but they had to go on my list anyway. So coming in at number 3, and you're going to have to push past the shelf Nazi to get this one too. It's not going to be on your sci-fi rack at your bookstore. Coming in at number 3 is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. Now, this is dystopian science fiction. This is post-apocalyptic science fiction, but this is also historical fiction. This is also amazing character work. This is also detective fiction. This is so many things. It is a Russian nesting doll of interconnected stories that achieve the impossible almost. It goes through our entire history of human beings, and by the time you get to the far-flung future and it reaches back to where you started, to our deep past, there is an epiphany at this ending that will send a shock through your system as these 2 points in time come together through the human experience and touch. It will knock you off your seat. It is jaw-dropping. And if you have not read this, because it is not on the shelf where you generally go, your fantasy sci-fi racks, seek this out, read it, you will be changed. Coming in at number 2, this is a hard one to categorize too, but this is on everyone's list, and there is a reason. Coming in at number 2 is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This public school teacher captured lightning in a bottle with the reworking of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Through each one of these tales that the pilgrims tell while they're going to sea and stand before the enigmatic shrike at the end of this book, peels back another layer of this enormous empire of humanity now that it's been strewn across the cosmos. It tells us about ourselves, it tells us about our beliefs, it tells us about our wishes, it tells us about our fears. This book is phenomenal. There are some follow-up books to this, but I do not think they stand on the pinnacle that this book stands on. Number 2, Hyperion, Dan Simmons. Guys, that just leaves me with my number 1 pick. We've come to it. And I gotta say, I gotta go with the crowd. This number 1 is the number 1 on so many people's lists, and there is an absolute reason. I have to go with Dune by Frank Herbert for my number 1. This book is space opera. It is sci-fi fantasy. It is a prescient warning about the fanaticism of religion. It is a prescient warning about our dwindling resources and the strife that will follow that. It is a prescient warning about climate change. It is great houses at war in a feudal society across an empire. This, and I'm going to say the trilogy, Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune. These 3 are everything that science fiction can be. It holds up a mirror to who we are. It holds a roadmap for what we should be worried about where we're going. It lets us know about where we came from. This encompasses everything that this genre can do in one package of a trilogy. If you haven't read this, you absolutely must. And there you go. My top 10. I fought with myself for days and days to narrow it down to this. I hope you enjoyed it. If I missed your favorite, let me know what those are. Make a case for them. Like and subscribe. And until next time, you don't have to pick up my top 10, but pick up and read something. Thanks for watching Talking Story.